Can we talk sex, lies, murder?
When 2 is company, 3 is murder.
This is the epitome of it right here.
How did your life go from being a housewife to participating in a murder?
The pastor of the church having sex with another woman.
This is beyond dysfunctional.
Sex, Lies, and Murder. A Real Crime original podcast from Reels. New episodes Wednesdays on Apple Podcasts, Podcast One, and Spotify.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 234 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you, man?
I'm doing excellente.
Excellente.
Yeah. And I put a little exclamation point on it as well.
Yeah.
No, I am. I'm really having a good week. I feel good. I think I told you, we were talking earlier, I've been working out, and, that always makes you feel good. I can't always get the motivation to do it,
Right.
but I know I should because it always makes me feel better.
Yeah. So change man coming.
Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah.
And that's all we can do, right? Hey, let's give our Patreon shout outs. We had Michaela,
Hey, Michaela.
Jason,
What's going on, Jason?
Chelsea Pontius,
Pontiasa.
Brad Paulo,
Hey, Brad.
Anastasia Conde,
Hey, what's going on, Anastasia?
Joylene Bennett,
Hey, Jolene.
Karen Kirkley,
Hey, appreciate that, Karen.
Ben JVMI,
Hey, appreciate that, Ben.
ST,
What's going on, Stu?
Danielle Sims,
Hey, Danielle.
Stacy Hazelton,
Hey, appreciate that, Stacy.
Brittany Nicholson,
What's going on, Brittany?
Anthony Hutchison.
Hey, what are you got me laughing for?
I don't know. There's a lot of sons there right in a row. Kingman Bond Graham,
Well, thank you, Kingman.
Sherry May Yu,
Well, may you too.
Catherine Sue,
Hey, Catherine.
Anissa Holly,
What's going on, Anisha?
Laura Walker,
Hey, appreciate that, Waka.
Deborah Toth,
Hey, Deborah.
Mandy Privet,
Hey, Mandy.
and Fred Mifflin.
What's going on, Fred?
So we appreciate all that new support. And then if we go back into the vault, Gibbs, this week we selected Terry Tokovich.
Hey, appreciate that, Tokovich.
So thank you to everyone that supports us on Patreon. We had some great PayPal donations as well from Photo Card Gallery,
Well, you got like a photo card gallery.
Dana Mackey,
What's going on, Dana?
and Kathy Holden.
Hey, appreciate that, Kathy.
So thanks to you as well. Gibbs, right now on True Crime All the Time, we have an episode out on Jimmy Lee Dykes and the Alabama bunker hostage crisis. Interesting episode. Jimmy Lee was a guy who had some thoughts about the government.
Yeah.
He wasn't happy, and he wanted to get those thoughts out to the masses, and he thought to do that, he would take a young boy hostage, and that's what he did.
Yeah, sure did.
But make sure you check that out. All right, buddy, are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I'm ready.
We are talking about the Shaw Creek Killer. In 1987, 2 hunters stumbled across the body of a young woman in the woods outside of Augusta, Georgia. Following that discovery, 3 more bodies were eventually discovered, indicating to investigators that they had a serial killer on their hands more than 30 years later. 2 of the women remain unidentified, as does the killer. In most of the United States, November marks the start of the deer hunting season. Families who depend on this meat to get them through the winter months prepare and plan for the short hunting season. And it is pretty short.
It really is.
I think it varies state by state, but I know here in Ohio, it's pretty short. Depending on how rural an area you live in, some schools even close on the opening day of hunting season, because if they didn't cancel classes, there wouldn't be that many people attending school.
No, I mean, you got the teachers out there hunting too.
Sure. It's no different in Aiken County, South Carolina. On Monday, November 16th, 1987, 2 hunters were moving through the woods looking for deer. They were in an area of forest just south of the city of Eureka, near the intersection of Highways 191 and Highway 208.
That's where there's a creek called Shaw Creek that flows through that parcel of land. It's a pretty expansive creek. It flows for several miles.
The two hunters were within sight of Shaw Creek when they came upon an alarming discovery: a complete human skeleton that was barely covered with dirt. The body was lying face down. The legs were crossed at the ankles, and the arms were outstretched in a pose mimicking Jesus on the cross.
Ever since we started the podcast, anytime I go out into the woods, I'm always looking around more than I ever did before. Because I'm thinking, am I going to see something?
What's out here?
What's out here?
Yeah, I understand that completely. I think before you and I started doing the podcast, before we began doing all the research, I never really thought about bodies being buried, but I do now.
Yeah.
Because we know there are. It's kind of strange to think about. The skeleton had been lying out there beside the creek, undiscovered for a long time, probably years.
And so much so, vegetation had grown over the bones, and some of the vegetation actually intertwined with the finger bones.
No flesh at all remained on the skeleton. The hunters called law enforcement. The responding officer remarked on the position of the skeleton and said it looked like it had been posed. The South Carolina Law Enforcement Division was called in and took the victim's remains for further examination and testing. Forensic examiners determined that it was a female, and they believed that she had been there for over a year, but they said that it could have been as many as 5 years. Many bones from her foot couldn't be found. They also didn't find her hyoid neck bone, but investigators did find some of her hair. Whoever the victim was, she was stripped of clothing and personal belongings. So obviously, Gibbs, they theorized that she was murdered. She was buried in a shallow grave, naked and alone, and left in the woods. So law enforcement began the task of identifying the victim and investigating her murder. A search of the area yielded only one piece of evidence: a brass shotgun shell casing that was found underneath the body.
Well, this is a hunting area, so who knows how long that shotgun casing could have been there, and if it was even related to her.
Yeah, well, we said 1 to 5 years. That's a number of deer seasons. Or maybe it was used to hunt something else. You just never know.
Right.
I think that makes it tough to even figure out if the shotgun shell casing is related to the murder or just came from a random hunter. Sue Townsend, the Aiken County coroner, spent months studying and researching the victim, searching for clues to her identity. Townsend observed that she had high cheekbones, indicating possible African American or Native American ancestry. They determined that she would have stood between 5 feet 8 inches and 5 feet 10 inches and weighed about 160 pounds. Scars on her skeleton indicated that she had broken her nose and damaged her right knee at some point during her life. She was missing several teeth and had a noticeable overbite. When they tested her hair, it tested positive for cocaine.
So some things that could potentially help the investigators, right? Knowing her height, knowing the fact that she had a broken nose at some point, maybe something happened to her knee, maybe somebody that fills out a missing person report might put some of this information down.
Maybe. I think everything is potentially helpful. I mean, even an overbite. If you're searching local dentists, getting records.
Right.
Okay, let's eliminate everybody that doesn't have an overbite, or an overbite that's a little more noticeable than most.
Yeah, because at this point, tattoos, things like that won't come into play because
No.
there's no flesh.
You're not going to have any of that. According to unresolved.me, it was reported that the victim's use of cocaine was significant to investigators. They surmised that she was likely a sex worker or a drug addict. So I think this fact or this determination helped guide their investigation. While they were trying to identify her, they looked at a number of missing persons from those categories.
That makes good sense.
From South Carolina and northern Georgia, investigators also considered that she could have been some type of seasonal worker or migrant worker from a farm. But despite their best efforts, the first victim, who was discovered in a shallow grave beside Shaw Creek, went unnamed. In 1989, a facial reconstruction expert put a face to Jane Doe, giving the public its first look at her possible likeness. But even that didn't bring any additional information. The identity of this Jane Doe from Aiken County has remained a mystery, as has the person who killed her and placed her body deep in the woods. And Gibbs, we said it right up front, right? There's going to be a total of 4 victims that we're going to be talking about. The 4 victims in this case became known as the Aiken County Jane Does. Aiken County is in South Carolina, but is part of the larger metropolitan area of Augusta, Georgia. And many of the individuals involved in this case have ties to both Aiken County and Augusta. Augusta sits firmly on the border between Georgia and South Carolina, and there are roads in the Augusta area that weave in and out of both states. A section of that city called North Augusta is on the northern side of the Savannah River, which divides the 2 states. Over a 6-year period, all 4 of the victims were discovered in the woods near Shaw Creek, just outside the city of Aiken and within Aiken County, South Carolina. 2 were eventually identified, while 2 remain unknown after more than 30 years. The killer of all 4 of these victims is also a mystery, and they have escaped justice for 3 decades, while denying their victims a chance to live out their lives. A few years after discovering the first Jane Doe in 1987, a second victim was discovered around Shaw Creek in 1991. The Augusta Chronicle reported that on March 22nd, loggers were harvesting pine trees in the woods south of the city of Aiken, just off Highway 191 near Shaw Creek, when the loggers made a terrible discovery. The loggers' activity revealed skeletal remains, and they called the Aiken County Sheriff's Office to notify them of their discovery. Officers responded and were at the scene within 30 minutes. This victim, like the Jane Doe from 1987, was found without clothes or any personal belongings. Again, Coroner Sue Townsend went to work to uncover details that might point to her identity. Townsend believed that this body had been lying in the unmarked grave for several years, whether to protect the investigation's integrity or because it just wasn't available. Very little information about the victim and the state of the remains was released at the time, including her cause of death.
It seems like a dumping ground.
Well, I think when you find the first body, skeletal remains, okay, you know something is not right. You know you've got a murder, but you don't know that it's anything other than a one-off murder. Now you found a second set of skeletal remains very similar to the first. Mm-hmm. No clothes, no personal belongings. So in addition to the fact that you now have 2 murders that you have to try and solve, I think instinctively police have to put the 2 together by location and by the circumstances in the state that the skeletons are in. The similarities between the 2. Then on January 25th, 1993, the third victim was discovered in the same area of Shaw Creek, but there were some differences detected on the remains of this victim. Forensic examiners concluded that this victim had been killed and had decomposed at another location. She was then relocated to the same 1.5 mile stretch of woods near Shaw Creek and placed near the other 2 women who had been found there. Another difference was that this victim had been burned after death, destroying all soft tissue, all of which may have assisted in identifying the victim, which to investigators was the most likely motive for burning the body.
This killer is definitely trying to cover their tracks.
Yeah, they definitely do not want to give the police a chance to try to identify these victims, right? They're going out of their way, taking their clothing, taking their personal belongings, now burning the body. Coroner Sue Townsend pinpointed the time of death between 1988 and 1991 and believed that the cause of death could have been attributed to a wound to the back of the neck. Like the other two victims, this woman was left without any personal effects to help point to her identity. Townsend estimated her age between 25 and 32, and her height somewhere in the range of 5'4" to 5'7". She had a medium build. She was right-handed and had an overbite.
I always wonder how they can determine if they're right-handed, left-handed at this stage of discovery.
Yeah, I don't know. Obviously, it's something to do with the bones of the hand. Maybe things form on the hand that you write with. I mean, I think it wasn't in the research, but obviously you can go through and theorize.
Like wear and tear on the bones, maybe?
Maybe that, or if you ever feel that the part of your finger where your pen rests.
Yeah.
On mine, it's raised a little bit. Now, over many, many years, it's what's caused that, I don't know.
Makes you wonder what they're going to do in the future, since so many people text and type and don't write anymore.
On May 21st, 1993, Sue Townsend and the deputy coroner, along with Aiken County Sheriff's investigators, went out to the Shaw Creek woods to search for additional victims and any evidence left behind by the killer or the victims. They found a tooth and a few small bone fragments, but that was all.
I would think after the first victim, but for sure after the second victim, I would have went out and scoured that whole woods, but I'm glad they did.
Yeah, it does seem strange to wait till the third victim is found in that area. Now, maybe they did some investigation that just wasn't in the research, but in that same year, a composite drawing using the facial reconstruction of the second victim found in 1991 was released to the public in the hopes that someone would come forward with her identity. The photo was published in South Carolina and Georgia newspapers and was broadcast on the news, hoping that someone would recognize her. But despite these efforts, the investigation didn't make much progress, and the cases were growing colder. The victims remained unidentified. That is until investigators got a break in 1993. 29-year-old Ristine Durden was last seen on March 13th, 1989, in her home in the small rural town of Avra, Georgia. 3 years after Ristine went missing, the fourth body of a young woman was discovered in 1992 on Uncle Duck Road in Aiken County near Sawyer Pond and Gilly Creek. This was about 15 miles away from where the other three victims had been discovered at Shaw Creek. Despite the distance, this victim matched the other victims in a number of ways. The skeletonized remains were not clothed. There were no personal belongings found in the vicinity. She matched the same victim profile as the others in that she was a young African-American woman who was left naked near a body of water. Police published the victim's profile in the Augusta Chronicle, where a relative of Ristine's spotted the reconstruction and notified police of her suspicions that it could be the missing Ristine Durden. Her identity was confirmed using dental records. But after that, very little progress was made in solving Ristine's murder.
Thank goodness they were able to identify the body.
Yeah, I think that's the first step for a number of reasons, right? Number one, you got to do that for the family.
Sure.
They have a missing loved one. If that really is their loved one, it's a horrible ending, but they have to know
right
what happened to her. And then I think number two, very tough to solve the murder until you can identify the victim.
Yeah, it's important for the investigators to get that backstory.
They got to figure out, who her friends are, Was she dating someone? That's what leads to normally what leads to figuring out who killed her.
Yeah.
Who killed a victim. You got to know the details of their lives to piece things together, unless these are total stranger murders. And even then, you got to know where she was last seen. Maybe somebody saw her with a man. Now you've got a composite sketch. All that stuff's important.
For not only her case, but also the other cases, right? Because it might lead to some discovery there.
Yeah, because if they're connected, which police believe they are, then you're looking for the same killer or killers in all 4 murders.
Yeah.
And obviously investigators did believe that all 4 murders were connected. This brought the victim count of what was now being called the Shaw Creek serial killer to 4. And they linked the 4 women due to the proximity of their remains, the race of all 4 women. All 4 were African American, the way they were killed, and how the victims were treated after death, meaning they were left nude. Their personal belongings were taken. Hey, TCAT Unsolved fans, whether you're struggling with grief, relationships, or stress, or you're having trouble sleeping or meeting your goals, online therapy might be for you. BetterHelp is secure online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with a licensed professional therapist. And you won't have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room. You can do the whole thing from the comfort of your home. You can log into your account anytime and send a message to your therapist. You'll get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule the weekly video or phone session. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it very easy and free to change therapists if needed. This is more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available. So visit BetterHelp.com/allthetime and join the over 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with the help of an experienced professional. True Crime All the Time is sponsored by BetterHelp, and our listeners get 10% off their first month of online therapy at BetterHelp.com/allthetime. That's BetterHelp.com/allthetime. The local newspaper, the Aiken Standard, doesn't have any articles covering Ristine Durden's case that we could find, and only one article appeared in the Augusta Chronicle, which has since been archived. On March 15th, 1994, the Florida State Police alerted the Aiken County Sheriff's investigators that a man named Frank Potts might be related to the killing of the victims near Shaw Creek. Frank Potts was arrested in 1994 by Florida law enforcement. He was a seasonal worker who roamed the southern states of Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and the Carolinas, but he went wherever opportunity took him. Frank Potts was described as kind and helpful by his neighbors, and friends said he was a great guy who was always willing to assist them in times of need. But he was also known as a little bit eccentric. He bought a plot of land in Alabama, deep in the woods, and erected a shed on it that he lived in when he wasn't traveling around the Southeast looking for work. I think Gibbs, he considered himself a little bit of a survivalist, and he went extended periods of time going out of his way to try to avoid civilization.
I think there's a lot of people who wouldn't mind avoiding civilization.
Why are you looking at me as though I would be one of those people?
You know you would be.
Yes, but it wouldn't be in a shed in the woods.
No.
It's here in my basement with all the amenities and Wi-Fi and my Xbox.
Yeah, you need air conditioning.
And air conditioning. But this guy was a little different. It seemed as though, he ventured out in public basically when he needed money. So he had to find work,
Right.
Or he was looking for maybe some type of an adventure. But Frank Potts also had another side to him that few knew about. In the 1980s, he was in prison for sexually assaulting a 12-year-old girl in Florida. He was eventually released after serving only 6 years of the 15 years he was sentenced to. After his release from prison, he resumed his life as a migrant worker and managed to stay out of trouble for 4 years until he had a blowout with an Alabama game warden in 1992. Potts was hunting with his teenage son, Frank Jr., when a game warden stopped him for not wearing a vest and not having a hunting license and possessing a weapon as a convicted felon.
Well, that's not good. We know that's illegal to have a weapon when you're a convicted felon.
And not just in Alabama. I'm pretty sure that is illegal across the United States. In response to this confrontation, Potts took the game warden hostage at gunpoint. And it turned out that the gun he was carrying was a high-end submachine gun.
Yeah, not really the type of gun allowed for hunting.
Yeah, I'm not sure what type of hunting, besides the fact that it's not legal
Right.
to hunt, what would you even hunt with a submachine gun?
Kind of takes the, if you're a hunter, I'm assuming it takes the
Sport
out of it.
it?
Yeah.
Potts somehow avoided returning to prison over this confrontation, which I don't understand at all.
Right.
Number one, you're a convicted felon who is caught possessing a weapon, but not just any weapon, a submachine gun.
Yeah. And he took a game warden hostage.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Each part separately, you would think would land somebody back in prison. You put it all together, I have no idea how this guy got out of it.
Yeah.
But he did reoffend in 1994 when he was caught molesting a 10-year-old girl in Florida. He was convicted of that and sentenced to 25 years to life in prison. And that's a sentence that I am absolutely okay with. I actually wasn't real happy about the, 15 years out and 6?
Yeah.
For the sexual assault or the molestation of a 12-year-old girl.
Way too quick.
That seems light to me. Now, I'm assuming that they took his past transgressions into account when he did it again, and that's why he got 25 years to life, and I'm absolutely okay with that. When police searched the 40-acre property where Potts built his shed in northern Alabama, they discovered the remains of a man named Robert Earl Gines, who had gone missing in April 1989. Gines was also a seasonal worker. He and his girlfriend had traveled with Potts in the past. And when it was all said and done, Gibbs, Potts received a second life sentence for the murder of Robert Gines.
Yeah, I read in an article that Potts ended up killing Gines over an argument because he wanted Gines' girlfriend. And Gines wasn't okay with that.
As most men aren't.
Exactly.
Can I have your girlfriend? No, you may not. It's not normally a conversation that goes down very well.
No.
And obviously this one didn't, and it led to murder. But investigators believe that Potts was responsible for many more murders. I've seen the numbers in the 12 to 15 range in several southern states. But it's not thought, or at least it's thought to be unlikely, that Potts is responsible for the victims found along Shaw Creek because he was in prison between 1982 and 1988, which is when Sue Townsend estimated that the first 2 victims had been murdered. I guess you could say it is possible that he might have killed the 3rd victim, but then that takes out of play the idea, which investigators believe, that all 4 victims are the work of a serial killer.
Yeah, I guess you could try to argue the 3rd victim.
Just based on timeline.
Yeah, exactly.
The fact that he was out. So after Frank Potts was ruled out as the serial killer that they were looking for, the investigation really kind of stalled for a number of years. In 1997, a 3D facial reconstruction of the 3rd victim, the Jane Doe from 1993, that was the victim who was burned posthumously, was completed. This was broadcasted and sent to several agencies. One thing that came out after this 3D rendering was that the sister of missing twin sisters Jeanette and Danette Milbrook, who both went missing in March of 1990, believes this Jane Doe could be one of her sisters. The Milbrook family has been pleading with the state to conduct DNA testing to rule her either in or out, but they haven't gotten a positive response so far. And I know, Gibbs, that the unsolved murders of the Millbrook twins will be an episode at some point in the future on TCAT Unsolved.
Sure will be.
In 1997, investigators got a break. A forensic pathologist with the University of South Carolina used technology that allowed them to superimpose photos of missing victims over the Jane Doe skulls.
Pretty cool technique.
Yeah, and you could see how that would be super beneficial. One of the photos belonged to a victim named Jacqueline Marie Council. It was reported in the Augusta Chronicle that Jackie was born on October 21st, 1956. She was 30 years old in 1986 and had 4 children. On November 10th of that year, she dropped off her 5-year-old son at kindergarten and was never seen again. Her family reported her disappearance later that evening when she didn't return home. They spent years worrying, waiting for answers as to what happened to Jackie. When the forensic pathologist superimposed Jackie's photo on Jane Doe number 2's skull, it was a match. Investigators then conducted DNA testing using one of Jackie's sons, and that was a match. Jackie was the second victim found at Shaw Creek in 1991. So Jackie's family had some answers after a number of years, but they didn't have all the answers they needed.
No. I mean, at least they know she's been found. But who did this to her? Why did they do this to her?
Yeah, those answers they don't have.
But this is going to help the investigators because now they have another victim identified and they can go back into that background and see what's there to help them not only solve her murder, but potentially the other ones.
As reported by the Augusta Chronicle, Coroner Sue Townsend said at a press conference that this was another step in finding out who killed these victims. So again, Gibbs kind of piggybacking on what you just said, I think she's absolutely right. You need to identify the victims. At this point, 2 out of the 4 have been identified, and we already gave it away up front. They still, to this day, have not identified the other 2.
Right.
It's an extremely important piece of the process. Could this killer be someone known to one of the victims? Could they be known to all 4? Or these are complete stranger murders. But like I said, maybe someone saw them.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times I think about killers, and especially serial killers. I go back to movies, which aren't always the best references to use, but you go back to Seven, you go back to movies like Zodiac. There's a lot of movies where they talk about the killer has to start somewhere. A lot of times, Silence of the Lambs is a perfect example. Where does the killer start? With someone they covet, right? Someone that is known to them.
Right.
Now, does that play out all the time in real life? No, I'm sure it doesn't. Could it be?
Could be.
It absolutely could be. But you need those identifications to try to figure that out.
And now investigators have that information on 2 of the 4 victims.
Which is better than none at all.
Oh, yeah.
Now, would you love it if they could figure out the identity of all 4? Absolutely. And I think they would be in a better position. I don't think there's any doubt about that. So at this point, Gibbs, I think we need to look at some possible suspects. While the case of the 4 Aiken County victims received some media coverage, I would make the claim that it wasn't a massive amount. But this case has been discussed on a number of online forums. It's been talked about on a number of podcasts. The Fall Line podcast, which covers unsolved cases in the Southeast United States, raised the possibility of an interesting suspect named Joseph Patrick Washington. The Fall Line podcast reported that Washington lived in Augusta and worked at the Mary Brickyards. His home was close to the Millbrook twins' home, where twins Danette and Jeanette went missing from. Their sister believed Jeanette resembled the composite rendering of Jane Doe from 1991. Washington was a short, stocky man, said to have been about 5'4", but was described as strong for his size. He was arrested in 1993 for a series of violent sexual assaults in the Augusta area. All of the assaults had a common theme. All the women were young. They were captured at gunpoint, forced into his vehicle, taken to another location where he sexually assaulted them and then shot them and left them there to die. Washington chose women with similar physical appearances. Their ages range from 18 to the early 30s. All were African American with short hair. Like the Aiken County victims, Washington's victims were left without any clothing or personal belongings. So I think, Gibbs, you can see here why the Fall Line podcast brought in Joseph Patrick Washington as a possibility.
Absolutely.
All credit to them. Very smart of them. There's a lot of similarities between his known victims and the Shaw Creek killer victims.
And he's in that region.
According to the Associated Press, at his trial, one witness testified that Washington had said he wanted to infect as many women as he could because his former girlfriend had given him HIV.
Okay.
So that was according to reports, the impetus for his attacks.
That's even sicker than I thought.
Washington was sentenced in Richmond County Superior Court to 17 consecutive life sentences in 1995 for the abductions and sexual assaults of 5 women, 3 of whom were shot but survived between 1991 and 1993. This was a very bad guy.
Yeah, for sure. That had a personal agenda to go out to hurt people because of something that happened to him.
Yeah, this is something that I believe he told some of, his victims. Now, it's also believed that he committed some murders, but he was never convicted of murder because he died in 1999. According to the unresolved.me website, another suspect that has been considered in the Shaw Creek murders is a man named John Wayne Boyer. Boyer had a gray beard, stood 5'7", weighed 300 pounds, and was bald. He was arrested in 2007, and the press dubbed him the Long Haul Territory Killer. So sounds to me, Gibbs, like somebody we should be doing an episode on it in the future on True Crime All the Time.
I think we probably will.
Gibbs, there's no doubt this John Wayne Boyer was a very bad guy. He was convicted of murdering a woman in North Carolina. While he was an inmate in a North Carolina prison, they matched his DNA to the murder of a woman named Jennifer Smith that occurred in Tennessee in 2005. He eventually confessed to that murder as well. He told investigators that Jennifer Smith was a sex worker who he picked up in his truck and drove to the abandoned parking lot where her remains were eventually found. While they were haggling about money, Boyer said he lost his patience and temper and he strangled her. He then threw her body out of his truck and drove off. According to NBCnews.com, Boyer is a suspect in several other cases of murdered women. Tennessee detective Scott Smith told the press, "I think there are a lot more. There's no telling. This guy traveled all over the country. Hopefully we'll get more of these cases solved through DNA." North Carolina's Brunswick County thinks Boyer could be involved in 3 unsolved murders there. And it was reported in the AP that 2 of the unsolved cases involve women who were small and slightly built, like Boyer's other victims. Boyer's defense attorney later shared a similar sentiment, saying, "It wouldn't surprise me if there's other stuff out there." So I think when your defense attorney comes out and says, there's more to it.
Yeah.
You got to take some stock in that.
No doubt this guy is a bad guy.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Now, does it mean he's the Shaw Creek killer? No. Could he be? Possibly.
And we know he lived in the Augusta area for most of his life. So that puts him in that area.
So obviously he was around. He did travel extensively through the Southeast and the Carolinas. And I think at one point, Gibbs, Aiken County investigators believed that the Shaw Creek killer could be a long haul trucker. Maybe they still do. I don't know.
I can see how they can make that connection.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, it's a theory, but I get the theory. The other thing I think is that this Boyer guy has a lot more skeletons in his closet than we know about, but there were significant differences in his known crimes and the little that we know about the killer of the Shaw Creek victims. Boyer selected victims who were slightly built white women, and he killed them far away from his home. So I think that right there really kind of separates him from the Shaw Creek killer. Okay, we said he lived in Augusta, but his known victims were killed far away from home.
Yeah, when he was en route with his truck somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. His victim type was small white females, where we know that the Shaw Creek killer's victim type was African-American females. But either way, he's a horrible person.
He is. Evil. Pure evil.
Pure evil. So it's been more than 30 years since the 4 Shaw Creek victims were murdered. Their killer has not yet been found and brought to justice. What I did find interesting, Gibbs, is that this is not a case that received a lot of media attention.
Pretty limited.
It did seem to be pretty limited. And I'm not sure why that is. You have what you believe to be a serial killer. You would think that quite a few stories would be generated about that over the years, but it was pretty sparse. And I think the question that we have to ask as we're wrapping up this case is, why did this killer stop killing in 1993? If they did, or at least stop killing in that area and using that kind of Shaw Creek location as a dumping ground.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big mystery there too, right?
Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean that the killer stopped killing. They could have moved. They could have started using different areas, locations to dispose of their victims, but it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Because if they did stop, well, why is that?
Did they get arrested?
Right. Incarcerated, died. There's some things that it could be. The one thing that we always talk about is very doubtful, right? That most serial killers stop killing on their own.
Right.
They're usually stopped by someone or something. So if this killer was not stopped by something, then that probably means they moved to a different area and most likely continued doing something very similar, but it just was never put together because maybe it was so far away or something like that.
But I don't believe he woke up one morning going, you know what? I'm done.
I shouldn't do this anymore. Yeah. It's wrong. No, I don't believe that either. I just don't think that's how the minds of serial killers work. Now, he could have died. Like we said, he could have been imprisoned on other charges, or he's still out there. And that's a very scary thought.
It really is.
If you have any information on the identity of the Jane Does and the murders or the murderer who took the lives of the 4 women that we talked about, please contact the Aiken County Sheriff's Office at 803-642-1761. If you'd like to submit a tip anonymously, you can do so through Crime Stoppers by calling 1-800-222-TIPS. So that's it, Gibbs, for our episode on the Shaw Creek Killer. We got some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
Hey, Mike and Gibby. Just wanted to thank you guys so much for everything that you guys do. I'm from Bowling Green, Kentucky. My name's Jed Smithson. You guys help me through my work week, whether I'm driving my semi, my truck, or my tractor. You guys are awesome. In an earlier episode, Mike, you talked about working at a box factory. My dad did that for many years back before I was even born. So I thought that was a really weird connection. And you guys talk about Skyline chili, and that stuff is my most favorite meal to ever eat. So just really appreciate you guys. Keep up the good work. Stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
A lot of connections, and man, I do love me some Skyline.
Oh man, that Skyline is so good.
And now I'm hungry. Now I want Skyline.
Get some Skyline.
Hey, Mike. Hey, Gibby. It's Christy from Central Texas, outside of Austin. You'll remember me from CrimeCon. I just want to say you forgot your puppy, so whenever you want to come back down here and get it, go ahead and do that. But I just wanted to check in with you and see if you had listened to that case about Jennifer Cave and what you might have thought of that. And then I was thinking, too, I looked at your Unsolved, and I didn't see that you guys haven't ever covered the yogurt shop murders. So if you just Google yogurt shop murders, if you're not familiar with it, everybody in Texas is real familiar with it. It happened in December of 1991, so it's unsolved, and it's coming up on 30 years of being unsolved. I just thought that would be a really good case to cover, especially since that big sort of anniversary is coming up. But anyway, love you guys. Gibby, sorry I missed you at CrimeCon, and we are looking forward to seeing you next year. You guys have a great day.
I do remember her from CrimeCon. I have not had a chance to look into that first case, but we did cover the yogurt shop murders. Sure, it was years ago.
Horrific.
It's probably like in the 40s or 50s,
yeah,
episode number wise, because it's been a number of years back, but we definitely covered it.
Hi, guys. My name is Elizabeth Clark. I am from southern Indiana, right across the river from Louisville. I've been wanting to call for a really long time, but I haven't had the nerve until now. I am happy to say I love you both, but I am absolutely Team Mike because I feel like we are kindred souls together. I was born in 1973. I graduated in 91. I'm an only child. I graduated from UK, so I'm a huge UK fan. My dad also graduated from UK. He was from Eastern Kentucky, so I bleed blue. Go Cat. I also am a teacher. I teach early childhood in a school district. I know your wife is a teacher, and I have two daughters, one in college and one in high school. So we have a lot of things in common. So Team Mike, although Gibby, I love you too. I am from Jeffersonville, Indiana, which is right by Utica. And one of your podcasts, the Shonda Shear podcast, happened literally probably a mile from my house at the Witch's Castle. And fun fact right now is that property is for sale. I don't know that I could live there, but anyway, I love you guys so much. I listen all the time, and I think you guys are awesome, and I can't wait to listen to the new one every week. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep your head on the swivel and keep your own time ticking. Thanks.
Wow, we love you too, and that's eerie how many similarities we have.
You know what else you have in common?
What's that?
You both say Louisville the wrong way.
Oh, yeah. I did notice that she said it correctly, but go Cats. Gibbs, that's it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.